Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for Something to Talk About Live. My name is Jamie Henkel, and I'm the Learning and Inclusion Manager at PFLAG National. We're so happy that you are here to join us today. I am going to bring in my partner in crime, my teammate, my colleague, and my friend, Jean Marie Nevada.
Thank you, Jamie, and it's always nice to get to spend time with you, especially because we don't get to spend time in person anymore. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Something to Talk About Live. So I will admit to you that we are having some technical issues right now, so we're working through those with one of our guests today having a really difficult time getting online. So we're trying to handle that. But while we are doing that, let me quickly tell you about what we are going to do today. So today, we're actually going to be discussing banned books and why are books getting banned, what's getting banned, and what are we supposed to do about it? So the article that we are going to be discussing today was done on CNN by Ala Al-Assar, and the title of the article was 8 of last year's 10 most challenged books had one thing in common: LGBTQ content. And so the article goes on to discuss what the most challenged books of the last year actually have been. And it does note that there's definitely a trend going. We are definitely seeing more books with LGBTQ characters or subject matter or content of some kind actually coming under fire. And so it was a really fascinating article. And to start the discussion, I want to bring in one more person, then we're going to see if we can bring everybody in. So first, let's bring up Liz Owen, PFLAG's Director of Communications, who's going to be part of this. And have we resolved our issues or...
Hi, everybody. I'm Liz Owen. As Jean Marie said, I'm based here in lovely Burbank, California. I've been with PFLAG for 10 years, and I have been trying to MacGyver our situation with Leslie and Newman, and we haven't been able to make it happen yet, but I'm MacGyvering over here as we talk over here, so hopefully.
You're very talented. So I do want to say to everybody, we were supposed to have Leslie Newman with us, who we're so excited. She is the author of over 70 books, including one of the most famous banned books, which is Heather Has Two Mommies. Unfortunately, in the age of everybody's on screen, we are having a very bad technical issue. So what I'm going to say is if we can't get her online, what we're going to do is actually do a one-on-one conversation with her, because as somebody who really knows about what this feels like on both sides of the conversation, her input is absolutely invaluable. So we promise that you are here for Leslie. I am so sorry. My heart is broken that we can't make this work, but we're going to have her on another time and have this conversation. But since we are all here, Jamie's going to take part in this week's discussion with us. And if you want to do this discussion at home, whether if you are a PFLAGger with your chapter, if you are a network group leader at work, or you're just somebody who's tired of talking about what's on television tonight with your family, you can go to straightforequality.org. And if you look right down at the bottom, it has discussion series. Click through and you'll get a link to this article and a link to the questions. So,
and I will say I do have a message to everyone from Leslie, who says she is so sorry she is now stuck in a Kafka-esque nightmare. And she is very much looking forward to joining us. We will be able to help her with her technical issues, and she's really excited to come talk to us at PFLAG. So she apologizes.
I'm so sorry. I promise. You know, I'm learning as I watch more news broadcasts that everyone is learning to roll with these punches, but I'm not good at rolling like this. I'm very disappointed. But we're gonna have a good conversation, and I promise everybody we're gonna have an incredible discussion with Leslie about her work and especially I think looking at this situation right now. So we wrote out 3 questions. Again, if you want to follow along or do this discussion at home, you certainly can download them. And I want to throw out the first question to my colleagues to talk about, which is, were you surprised that 8 of the 10 most commonly challenged books had LGBTQ content and characters? So why or why not? And what do you think the impact of those challenges actually is on people who do identify as LGBTQ?
So I'm a parent. I have 14-year-old twins. Pray for me. And both of them are voracious readers. I am not even remotely surprised that this was the case. Both of my kids were deeply involved with their GSA at school. You know, they're good, supportive people. And both of them, as I said, are voracious readers. And we have had numerous conversations about, you know, the challenges of not having access to these books, and the visibility Like for people, for their friends who are LGBTQ plus, the idea that they would be going and trying to find books and read stories that they relate to, that means something to them, and not seeing any characters that look like them, or are dealing with the same challenges they're dealing with. And that's, my kids are high school, but from a very young age, when you have kids who have two mommies, how important is it for a 4 or 5 or 6-year-old to see that book in their school library and have that access to see families that reflect their family on the page?
Liz, does it surprise you that this seems to be an emerging trend, that more books with this kind of content are getting banned?
It doesn't surprise me, and it's sad, and concurrently, I'm sad that it doesn't surprise me. I think there's a lot of fear around things that people don't understand. And, for people who have LGBTQ loved ones who are out, who know them, it's much less scary. For people who are maybe not aware that they have someone like that in their family or know someone who is, it may just be that, they're fearful. And also, I think for adults, the brains go right to sex, right? You hear LGBTQ content, and it's like, oh, there's sex.
Yeah.
It's actually not what that means. And, you have to remember that books are written to grade levels and written to a certain, YA books are for YA readers. And the content is appropriate to the right age level. Heather Has Two Mommies is written to children at an appropriate age.
Yeah. And you just mentioned YA literature, which means I have to turn around to Jamie, who knows more about YA than anybody that I know. So Jamie, tell me what you think. Were you surprised? What do you think the impact is? Because you're coming from a different place than Liz is.
Well, first I'm going to say that YA is not only for young adult readers. That's a big push I'm going to make. And I have to admit that in a way I am surprised, if only because I'm surprised that there are people out there in the world that like this is how they spend their time, is challenging children's books in libraries. And I think that because of the bubble that I'm in, because of the people I surround myself with, because of my work at PFLAG, because of so many different things, I would say that yeah, it does surprise me a little bit. And I think when it comes to impact, it's exactly what Liz said. And I think we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but I just know how important it is for people to see people that are like them in the books that they're reading, the shows that they're watching, the TV or the movies that they go to see, the stories that they read, the comics that they're into, whatever it is. It's important for people to see folks that look like them. And so I think that the removal of these titles, the ban of these titles, definitely has an impact, because young people, old people, Black and brown people, queer people, like they're not going to be able to find that content that really validates who they are in the world.
Yeah, and that's difficult. I mean, I remember being a young person in my school library, and there really wasn't anything like that. The only outlet that I had was actually to go to a bookstore and find some of those books. And I was just lucky enough at the time to live in Portland, Oregon, where you had Powell's Books. By the way, support your local booksellers during this time, especially the independent ones. That gave me access. And I remember looking at that shelf of all these books and thinking, I'm here, but the fact that that was not in my school, admittedly, I went to school 700 years ago before the printed word. So that was, sorry. So my next question to you actually talks about, in the article, there's a great infographic from the American Library Association, the ALA. And they said that of the 377 challenges received in 2019, 31% of them appeared when the books were specifically in schools or school libraries. So, do you feel different about the placement of books in, let's say, a school library versus a public library? Should there be more restrictions on one space? Should there be less restrictions on both spaces? Do you think where these books are found is part of the conversation that we need to have? And Liz, maybe you want to go first on that.
Sure. I do think it matters. I do think it's really concerning, particularly for school libraries, not to allow access. And I do have to shout out the librarians. 3 cheers for the librarians, maybe 10 cheers for the librarians. Yeah. Because overwhelmingly, not to create, I know not all librarians are the same, but overwhelmingly the inclusive nature and support of librarians for these books. The ALA puts out every year the rainbow list of LGBTQ specific books. We've shouted them out. My daughter in particular became super close with her school librarian in her middle school, who was always looking for great content. And what a challenge it is when it's not available in school. And look, as a parent, it's hard enough getting my kids not, me too. It's hard enough to not be, this all day. I want them to have access at school to stuff that engages them and interests them. And if the content reflects their experience, it's going to engage them more. I think the really concerning thing about it not being accessible in schools, first of all, not every kid has access to a public library, but most kids do go to school. Overwhelmingly, millions of children in public schools. And there's going to be subject matter that my kids, I would like to not think this is the case, but there are things they're not going to want to talk to me about. What are those things if you're watching? But if they can't talk to me and there aren't trusted adults they can talk to, then I do want to know they have access to material that will be helpful to them. And if they can't get it at a public library, they need to be able to access it at school. It's critical. It's where they spend the majority of their time.
So you're actually saying there should be more available in that school setting, that's actually the most important place, when in fact we're finding that so many of those challenges are actually happening in that space. So Jamie, what do you think about this?
I don't have any difference of opinions when it comes to censorship in schools or public libraries. I'm against it, totally. So it does not really concern me it does concern me that so many challenges are happening in schools, because I think that there is no difference. People should have access to age-appropriate resources that speak to a variety of topics. One of the other things that you will see in that infographic that we linked to a couple times in the discussion questions is that if you look at the largest words, sexuality and LGBTQIA+ and gender identity are among the biggest words in that word cloud. And that is really particularly concerning to me, especially knowing that in a lot of schools, young people also don't have internet access to the PFLAG website, to the GSA network, to GLSEN, to HRC, because there are content blockers that prevent them from accessing those sites because words like gay and LGBTQ get flagged, and so you no longer have access to those sites. So if you don't have books because they're being challenged, and you can't access a web resource because it's being blocked, it really leaves LGBTQ+ young people with nowhere to turn. And I think that is disastrous.
I agree with you. And I think I probably have a little bit more of an absolutist view like you do. Admittedly, I'm not a parent, so I've never had to navigate the age appropriateness of conversations. But I think one of the interesting points that comes up in the article is that the complaints that are being filed are not being filed by students themselves. These complaints are being filed by interested parties who typically are gatekeepers. And they're creating another level of gatekeeping and another level of sort of paternalism that is frankly really wrong-headed, because to segment out an entire group of people simply because they live their lives in a way that's not consistent with you is kind of a frightening thing. We can just make people go away, essentially, is the sort of philosophy on this. So I want to go to the third question, which is about what we do with this. And then, so if you are joining us online, please send those questions, because we are going to start reading some comments off. So the ALA infographic noted that 12% of the challenges actually came from political and religious organizations. So speaking about who is the person who is actually complaining. So my question to both of you is, in our current political climate and this very horrific time that we are living through, what should people do? What do you do to actually change this? Because I think the three of us can probably agree, the fact that LGBTQ has ascended to become such a big issue on this list is a call to action to me. And I think if you're listening to this and you agree with what we're saying, we all need to be doing something. So first Liz, and then Jamie, let's talk about, I'm not supposed to say this, but how do you raise a little hell when things go off the rails like this?
It's funny that you say that, because I was literally sitting here just stifling, every PFLAG instinct goes flying out the window and the rage comes forth. We talked about gatekeeping. It's like, no, it's gatekeeping. You're trying to block anything gay, anything, you know, LGBTQ. It's just enraging to me. So, you know, we can't really do, it's hard to do things with private schools. It's hard to do things with, you know, faith-based learning places, faith-based schools. But public schools are public schools, so this might be a good time to raise the separation of church and state and why outside organizations probably shouldn't be sticking their noses into what public schools are keeping in their libraries. You know, I think there are a lot of things that you're doing. I'm seeing in the comments a few people mentioning things like, you know, drag queen story hours and PFLAG chapters getting involved with book donations and reading times, which I think are amazing. I'm loving what this person said right here about approving books for book report projects. I think is really brilliant. You know, I think anything that we can do to support the librarians who are really on the front lines of this issue, whether it's a school library or public library, is helpful. They know the books they want. They're paying attention to the books that are coming out. They work with the book providers. And I look at us as sort of like the fierce parent wing people in this role. I think it's a really great place for PFLAG members and supporters to get involved. Yeah, and speaking as a parent, I will do anything I can, again, to make sure that that access to material is there and readily available.
Yeah. Jamie, what do you think?
So one of the things that I also noticed in the infographic was that, you know, while 12% of challenges were coming from political and religious organizations, 45% were identified as coming from patrons, so the users of the library. And so I think that the political and religious implications here are probably a little bit underrepresented. That some of the challenges individual humans are making is also because of political or religious ideology or identification. And that's really challenging for me. You know, I'm someone who identifies as a nun, an N-O-N-E. And so whenever I see things like that, it is sort of like it's a gut. And I mentioned as we were getting started, I didn't know people spent their time challenging books in libraries. And so it really is concerning to me that this is a reality. And when it comes to sort of standing up and pushing back and raising a little bit of hell here, I think one of the things that we can do is really uplift and acknowledge the fact that the American Library Association has an inclusive non-discrimination policy, has a very forceful statement that they have put out saying it is a librarian's responsibility to include LGBTQ titles, that they have the Rainbow Book List that they release every year, that Liz mentioned, that they do like a Stonewall Award each year to a single title. Like we need to do what we can to uplift those things. And I think right now in the environment that we're in, using social media to do that is a great tool. You know, share the Rainbow Book List. Ask friends how many of the titles they've come across or they've read or they know somebody who has read or what have you. And so that's an idea that I have. And I do also, I want to shout out a program that PFLAG launched a number of years ago at our convention and as well as in sort of print earlier this year, which is PFLAG Gives Back. And one of the things that we encourage chapters to do is to donate books, to find children's books, to clean them up, to donate them to libraries and those sorts of things. So I just wanted to call that out for a moment as well.
I love both of the things, actually all the things that both of you are saying. I think there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. You know, we talk, and I love the fact that so many people who are joining us are talking about donating books. You know, you can do that for libraries. I can tell you I have my Marlon Bundo book. When this is one of the ones that got banned, when this one got banned, when the controversy started, I actually sent emails to a few friends who had kids and said, can I buy the book for your child? And so a couple of people took me up on it. So I knew that those books went directly into the hands of some of my friends' children, which was kind of fun for me. I like being the weird aunt who just sends those gifts that parents need to undo later. But I think there's
doesn't sing or make noise. Parents love it. Trust me.
Wait until I start sending stuff to your house, Liz. But I think there are other things that people should look at. I think one of the most important things is get involved with your local school board. It has been the strategy of anti-equality activists for probably 30 years at this point, and it shows why some of this is happening, because there has been a concerted strategy to do this. So if you don't like what you're seeing, get involved with your school board. I mean, and that might be a leadership position, but if not, show up for those meetings, because I guarantee somebody who wants to ban a book is showing up for the meeting and talking. It would be nice if you were there too.
Sorry, I have to shout out then my home district. So Burbank Unified School District, love Burbank. So our school district, our school board has a number of parents on it. And two of them, one is the parent of a gay person, one is the parent of a trans person. They actually founded the local PFLAG Burbank chapter. So there's this beautiful connection between PFLAG, parents who are concerned and invested in the materials that are getting to the schools. When California came down and wanted inclusive sex ed, Burbank just hopped on it quickly. And they do the same thing with books. And, you know, they have GSAs at all the schools. When we went into, you know, the situation where now coronavirus, I noticed on the Burbank Unified School District website, they have resources specific to LGBTQ students right on their website. So to your point, because there are parents who are invested and at, you know, in all levels invested and engaged, you see it funnel to all of the schools. It's a really beautiful thing.
It truly is. And I think, you know, when you couple sort of that level of organizing with donating books and being vocal and frankly, having conversations with your kids, having conversations about what they're reading, helping them talk to other people about why they're reading these books, why these books are important. I mean, beyond it's just a good book, but it, you know, it made me feel seen or it helped me understand things. These are opportunities you have. This is the amazingness of books. So we are going to go to some questions and comments. But before that, I actually asked Liz and Jamie to look at the various and assorted lists of banned books and give us maybe from this year or from one of the previous years, what one of your picks would be, the most important one that you think people should be reading.
So for me, I'm going to say Drama by Raina Telgemeier. My kids loved that book. My daughter in particular devoured that book. And it was a gateway to all of her other books. And when I told her that was one of the banned books, she's like, but it's not even really a big thematic. I think she said there's just a gay kid in it. And that was enough. Again, my apologies. I've not yet picked it up myself, and it's so now bruised and battered. It's probably time to order another.
It's time. This book feels so good. Henkel, what is your favorite one from the list?
So from this year's list, I'm going to admit it. I already said I love YA, and so Harry Potter would be the book that I chose that had the biggest impact for me. And I think that is true for lots of people sort of my age. That it was a series that got us back in love with reading. And it is a series that has been sort of academically in research proven to impact the way that we interact with the world. It makes us kinder. It makes us less racist, less sexist. Like there's research that demonstrates that. And so that is the one that I would call out, recognizing that there is some controversy there, but it is for people sort of my age group and a little bit younger than me. It is a series that got us back into books, if you will.
Which I think it's so, and I think, you know, even these books that have controversy around them, it's an opportunity to have a conversation. It's an opportunity to discuss what is the controversy, why, and how do we respond, and how does it change the way we perceive literature? And what does it mean in terms of the social impact it has to it? So, I mean, even within those controversies, there's so much that we can do. I have to admit that from this year, my always favorite definitely is Handmaid's Tale. It's an incredible book. And if you haven't read the sequel to it, it's totally worth it while you're sort of in quarantine. But I mean, even I don't have children. I have to admit, past books, we have like I Am Jazz. One of my favorites, if you've never seen it, This Day in June. It's all about pride. There's a whole page just on PFLAG. I'm trying to get into the
love that book.
Into the shot. If you're looking a little bit more mature, Leah's book, October Morning, with the Matthew Shepard book. It hasn't been banned, but it again falls into these themes. It's a really incredible piece. So Jamie, talk to us. What are people saying online, and do we have any questions?
So there were a lot of really positive comments about things that PFLAG chapters are doing, things that are happening in communities. But one question that came up that I think is pretty interesting, and that I'd like to share with you, is that somebody was wondering if the three of us could give some advice on sort of changing your approach on talking about LGBTQ issues, because they have on their own been told that they're a little bit too aggressive, and they'd like some advice on how they can change the way they're talking to people to really uplift and be positive and make a difference.
Wow.
Recommend a good book.
There's a book for that. There's totally a book for that. So here's my suggestion. I feel like you made this question up, Jamie, but so if you're looking for different ways to have conversations, what I would like you to do is go to straightforequality.org. It's one of PFLAG's programs. It's the program that Jamie and I actually work on. And there we have several publications, including the Guide to Being a Straight Ally, the Guide to Being a Trans Ally, Be Not Afraid, which is our ally in faith communities guide. We've got a lot of stuff up there. And really what it is guidance on how do we not make these conversations start with an argument? How do we make them about people? How do we make them about the people that you know and that you care about? How do we make them about things that people can relate to? Because I think if we start with the political argument, we've already lost in some ways because we've all made up our minds for the most part. But if we can relate it back to people, it gives people a lot more. It gives people a lot more to talk about, and it really shifts the focus. It's not political when it's about your kid or your best friend or your favorite colleague at work. So that's my thing. But Jamie and Liz, as you're both nicer than I am, I'm always willing to hear your opinions too.
Well, I meant it for real. I think the idea about finding a few books to recommend, I think is actually a great door opener. Go to straightforequality.org and download some of our publications or share them electronically. I mean, I think meeting people where they are to have challenging conversations and listening are crucial. By listening, we see where their concern points are. If we're only doing the talking, which sometimes can feel like aggressive, even if it's the loveliest talk in the world, if we're not taking a breath and listening to what the real concerns are and acknowledging that some people have real concerns. You know, the reason we have a faith ally guide is because there are people who are, you know, people of faith where they've been receiving messages, non-affirming messages for a long time, and encouraging people to just leave their church or their faith tradition. That's not always the best tactic. Leave your church. I've got a new one for you. Can feel aggressive, even if it's loving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and what I would throw out there is sort of as an ally, one of the things I also need to recognize is my own triggers and hot buttons when it comes to these issues, because I can get triggered. I can get aggressive. I can get angry. I'm thinking specifically of some people from the town where my parents live and the way that they talk about LGBTQ issues. And it took a lot for me to recognize those triggers, recognize that when somebody uses the word lifestyle, it makes the back of my neck hot and it like steam is coming out of my ears. It took me a while to realize that that's what was going on, but that was on me, not on the person saying that. And it might be that they're being rude, but it might also be that someone has never told them before that, you know, lifestyle isn't really a preferred term anymore. It makes the implication that somebody's making a choice to be LGBTQ. And if I am not the person that's going to do that, who is? And so I do think that there's some responsibility there. I do want to be mindful of the fact that we are at the 30-minute mark, and a couple people that have asked about sort of lists of LGBTQ inclusive titles and books. I shared the link to the Rainbow Book List from the American Library Association in the comment section. But just in case you didn't catch that, if you were to do a web search or a Google search for ALA Rainbow List, it will pull up every year that they have ever created that list. So that is my recommendation. And thank you all so much.
Yes. So
thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Liz. Leslie, I hope you're watching and we're going to have you on. I I promise. I have a whole stack of your books that I'm leaving around right now. So we're going to do this. To everybody out there, thank you again for joining us for Something to Talk About. This is always fun. It has become the highlight of my week, also because it's the one day of the week I actually wear real clothes. But talking to everybody is fun and feeling connected is fun. So we will be back here next Thursday again to do another Something to Talk About. Until then, please, as we always say, run fast, laugh hard, and please, above all, be kind. I'm Jean Marie Navetta, and I'll see you next week.